All right, everyone. We have a weird story from Pennsylvania. I'm going to read some of this verbatim because it's actually quite disturbing when you think about it. The U.S. government appears to be geared towards taking care of people who are, in many cases, illegally in the United States and basically throwing U.S. citizens under the bus. Now, I will say first and foremost, and this is something that some of you won't agree with, I have sympathy for people who migrate to the United States. A lot of times they're from a country like fucking Venezuela or something where they're not going to be able to get ahead. They're not going to be able to even carve out a living. They're going to be wiping their ass with the local currency and standing in a bread line. I have sympathy for them. I don't I don't begrudge them the ability to, in some cases, even come to the United States. Some of these people are authentically seeking asylum, and they're from a part of the world where they would be legally due to do that. But then again, you've also got, over 10 million people that are simply illegally in the country. They should not be here. I do not support the DREAM Act, things like that. I mean, I know, if you served in the military, you went to college and stuff like that, okay, give them conditional residency or something, see if they commit any crimes. But other than that, most of them should be deported, actually. But I wish that the U.S. government would take care of helpless and needful U.S. citizens the same way that it's doing people from other countries. Because really, it's a lot of people are falling through the cracks. There are also millions of people. There are millions of people who are veterans of the U.S. military. They've got kids. They've fallen into addiction or something like that. And they're literally rigging up tents under a highway overpass or something like that. I'm going to read some of this verbatim, though. It pissed me off. It'll upend the community. Pennsylvania town roiled by talk of migrant housing in Civil War-era orphanage building. Greene Township officials initially ruled migrant housing would not meet current zoning ordinance. So in other words, like the housing that they were going to build, and they've been building it all over the country, wouldn't meet the zoning ordinance. So they're like, we'll use a pre-existing structure. Well, while that's a little bit more efficient, I would think that an orphanage from the middle of the 19th century is probably a cultural landmark of some sort. I don't think that you should be housing anyone in it. It's probably not up to code itself, actually, when you come to think about it. In an August letter to the USA Upstar staffer, Greene Township zoning officer Daniel Bachman wrote that its most recent use as a summer camp falls within its R1, or low-density residential, code, and that higher-density shelter would not be permitted. Bachman wrote that his company could appeal the ruling. I find this disturbing. You've got literally millions of people filtering into the country, and the U.S. government is building them housing and subsidizing it with taxpayer money. And I'm thinking, God damn, can I get, subsidized housing? I mean, I pay taxes, lots of them. Oh, that's shit. You're using all of that money to go bomb you many orphans and stuff like that. It pisses me off because there are so many people in our country that are already in need. Vermont, for instance, every year, the high schools and shit like that, they'll do fundraising. And they'll try to get, Thanksgiving, meals ready for, people that are generally elderly or sometimes just poor. And, get them a turkey and because they can't afford it themselves. They can't afford a can of goddamn yams. But yet we're spending probably at this point billions of dollars making housing for people that aren't even legally entitled to be in the country. Can't we expend that money? If my taxpayer money is going to go to such a project, can we not house homeless veterans? Can we not house the elderly? We've got enough problems of our own, and we're a developed country. Keep in mind, the United States is a wealthy country. And so sometimes I think that people sort of lose track of the fact that there are people that have fallen through the cracks in our own country, and they're like, well, we've got all of this money. Look at our GDP. Certainly we can take in millions of migrants. Yes, but that's not the point. There are people in the country that have already fallen through the cracks. We can't even take care of them. How the hell are we supposed to take care of people from foreign shores? I have no problem with immigration. Immigration is perfectly fine. I have no problem with someone legitimately seeking asylum. The problem is that there's no vetting process whatsoever at the border. At this point, people just fucking walk across it with impunity. There's basically no effort to stop them whatsoever. And we've got people in the country itself. They were born in the United States. Some of them serve their country. Some of them have kids. Some of them are elderly. And what are we doing for them? Absolutely nothing. Basically, it's like you wait in line for 2 hours to get told you're not eligible for food stamps or something like that. People that are productive members of society, or could be productive members. Like, this person has become addicted to crack. It doesn't mean that they don't have skills. It doesn't mean that they don't have talents or anything like that. But the government's too busy building housing for people that aren't even legally entitled to be in the country. As far as I know, other than a couple of countries in Western Europe and I suppose Canada, we're pretty much the only developed country that actually has this sort of system. Now, I realize that, of course, we have a much bigger land border than some of these countries. I mean, Canada's land border is with the United States. For example, Western Europe, you've got the Schengen area. Those borders, they're a little bit odd at times. I've been to Europe, I've been in the Netherlands and Germany, etc. It can feel a little bit strange to an American. But I wish that the government would do for the U.S. citizenry what it's doing for people that are not U.S. citizens. That's all I'm asking. I'm asking for equality. Isn't this equity? U.S. citizens should be treated the same as migrants are treated. I think that would be a good thing. Unfortunately, that's not really happening. Unfortunately, what's happening is the U.S. government is building huge housing projects and, slamming migrants into there and subsidizing everything and or giving them like free room and board. And meanwhile, you have to go and pay if you sit in a hotel. So if there's a derelict hotel, a migrant will go in there and the government will pay for the fee. Ta-da! It's perfectly fine. And then they can have their little burner in there and eat the neighbor's pets, I suppose. If you go to the same hotel, you'll either be rejected or you'll have to pay for your room. Now, I don't begrudge people basic housing if they're already in the country. But most of these people should simply be deported. They are illegally in the country. And it's to the exclusion of the government's apparent ability to take care of the basic needs of U.S. citizens. Again, many of these people, veterans, they've got PTSD, they can't really get work, they've never been rehabbed, they're just fucked up all the time, and they're living under a highway. Somebody has become addicted. They're literally living in a tent. And by the way, the government did not subsidize the tent. You've got entire families, U.S. citizens, who can't find butt-fuck anything. They can't get any fucking assistance. They're like fucking panhandling in the streets. Meanwhile, you've got people who have come into the country against our own laws with regards to the border, clearly disrespecting them. Not all of them, but many of them. And they're getting subsidized housing, and free food, and credit cards, and phones, and shit like that. The government has not provided that to any U.S. citizen, to my knowledge. Have you ever been really, really poor? I have. Again, I've been on food stamps before, for a limited time, and I was humiliated by having to be on them. I've scrounged cigarette butts up off of the asphalt. I've gone without meals, and I've done the poor thing. The amount of government assistance that's there for you if you're really, really poor is actually really, really limited. Meanwhile, I see them building multi-million-dollar housing complexes for people that came into the country against our rules. I'm uncomfortable with this. Call me an extremist if you want. I don't think that the average clanker will call me an extremist for this particular opinion, by the way. But there are people out there that'll criticize you if you criticize the system, even though it's clearly not working. Millions and millions of people out there can barely buy food. Some of them can't even buy food. Some of them are like, hopefully somebody leaves a half-eaten sub in this dumpster because, otherwise I'm going to go without lunch. This is a completely unacceptable situation, and the U.S. government has completely flubbed on immigration. And that's just the truth of it. They've completely, they've bastardized the border to the point where it's completely Swiss cheese. And they're not even making an attempt at this point. Hell, the legacy media doesn't even talk about the issue. The crossings continue. Tens of thousands of people per day in some days. At least thousands of them on, that's just a nominal day. That's a lot of people. You're filling up the population of a small town every single day at the U.S. southern border, and some crossings at the northern border, and some people that come especially from Eastern Europe and overstay their visas. And the problem is simply not being addressed. There's no attempt actually being made by the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration, we'll call it. By the way, when Harris is pressed on the issue, she won't even answer any goddamn questions. That's about all. Peace out.